A wedding dress fitting ended in tears when his sister walked out of the dressing room wearing my gown. She twirled, smiling, and whispered, "It should have been me." My husband stared in awe and said, "Wow, it really suits you." My hands trembled as I stepped forward. "You like it?" I asked sweetly. She smirked. I leaned in and whispered, "Then you'll love what's coming next." Seconds later, the doors burst open, and her secret was exposed. I'm not the kind of person who starts fights. I don't look for drama, I don't enjoy chaos, and I've always been the kind of person who avoids conflict when I can. But sometimes, life throws something so outrageous at you that there's no choice but to fight back. This is the story of how my fiancé's sister tried to steal my wedding dress, how my fiancé helped her do it, and how, in one explosive moment, I realized my entire relationship was a lie. And then, the doors burst open. But let's start from the beginning. I got engaged to my fiancé, Daniel, after 5 years together. He wasn't the most romantic guy, but he was steady, responsible, and I truly thought he loved me. I had spent so long waiting for him to propose that when it finally happened, I didn't question it. I just said yes. Wedding planning was stressful, but the one thing I had been looking forward to the most was the dress. I wasn't the kind of person who had dreamed about my wedding since I was a kid, but when I finally found the dress, I understood why people got emotional over this stuff. It was perfect. A lace mermaid gown, delicate and elegant, hugging my body in all the right places. I cried when I put it on. My mother cried. Even my best friend, who never cried at anything, got misty-eyed. It was mine. Or at least, it was supposed to be. Because somehow, my fiancé's sister, Sarah, decided it was hers. Sarah had always been competitive with me. If I got a promotion, she suddenly had exciting career news. If Daniel and I planned a vacation, she suddenly had an even bigger trip to brag about. If I posted a couple's picture, she posted a more affectionate one with whoever she was dating at the time. It was exhausting. She didn't like me, but she also didn't want to be left out. At first, I thought it was just insecurity, but over time, I started to see it for what it was. She wanted to be me. So when I didn't involve her in wedding planning, she was pissed. She whined to Daniel about being excluded, but I stood my ground. She wasn't a bridesmaid. She wasn't even a guest I was excited about. I knew she'd make it about her somehow, and I didn't want to deal with it. That turned out to be the right decision. But I had no idea just how far she would go. I was at the bridal boutique with my mom, my maid of honor, and a couple of close friends. The appointment was private, just how I wanted it. Then Daniel showed up. With Sarah. I hadn't invited him. He had never expressed interest in anything wedding-related before, so I was confused as to why he suddenly wanted to be there. And Sarah? She walked in like she owned the place. I felt my stomach tighten, but I forced a smile. "Oh, hey. Didn't know you were coming." Daniel smiled back, all innocent. Sarah just wanted to see the dress. I didn't like it, but I wasn't going to start an argument in the middle of my fitting. I figured she'd take a quick look and leave. I was so wrong. The assistant brought out my dress. My heart sped up just looking at it. But before I could even touch it, Sarah grabbed it. Not in an admiring, "Wow, let me look at it" kind of way. She grabbed it and walked straight into a dressing room. I froze. My mom's mouth dropped open. My best friend made a strangled noise in her throat. "What the hell?" I blurted. Daniel just shrugged. Shrugged. "She just wants to see how it looks," he said like it was no big deal. "She's not the bride," I snapped. I could feel my pulse in my ears. "That's my dress." Before I could march in there and rip it off her, the curtain swung open. And Sarah stepped out. Wearing my wedding dress. She twirled, running her hands over the fabric, smiling like she had won something. Then she looked at Daniel. And Daniel. He whispered, "Wow, it really suits you." I swear, for a second, the whole world went silent. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Sarah was watching me, her lips curled in a smirk, eyes filled with triumph. Then she spoke, her voice soft but filled with so much venom it made my skin crawl. It should have been me. I felt my whole body go cold. Sarah thought she had one. She thought she had taken something from me. I smiled. A slow, sweet, deadly smile. I took a step forward. You like it? I asked. Sarah's smirk widened. I do. I leaned in so close I could smell her perfume. Then you're going to love what's coming next. And right on cue, the boutique doors burst open. A woman I had never seen before stormed inside. Tall. Elegant. Holding a baby. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking straight at Daniel. You have got to be kidding me. She snapped. Daniel's whole body stiffened. Sarah went rigid. The woman stormed up to Daniel, eyes blazing. You're standing here, playing dress up with her, while you're ignoring my calls about your daughter? The room exploded. My mom gasped. My friend stared. The boutique assistant looked like she wanted to disappear. I felt the floor shift beneath me. What? I said, my voice oddly calm. The woman finally turned to look at me. You didn't know, did you? She said, laughing bitterly. Of course not. He's been dodging me for weeks. She adjusted the baby in her arms. This is your fiancé's child. She's 2 months old. I swear I stopped breathing. My ears started ringing. Daniel, my fiancé, had a child? A whole baby? And Sarah knew. That's why she had been smirking. That's why she had been acting so smug. Because she thought, somehow, she won. The room felt like it had been struck by lightning. No one spoke. No one moved. Daniel's face had drained of all color. Sarah, who had been full of smug confidence just seconds ago, looked like she had been slapped. The woman, still holding his child, stared him down, eyes burning. You thought you could just disappear? She hissed. You don't answer my calls, you ignore the court summons, and now you're here, helping your sister play bride in someone else's wedding dress? I felt like I was floating outside of my own body. I turned to Daniel. My voice came out eerily calm. You have a child? He swallowed, eyes darting to Sarah, as if she could save him. Sarah, who was still in my dress, stiffened. Then, in a voice that was both defensive and desperate, she blurted out, She's lying. Natalie, because I would later learn that was her name, let out a bitter laugh. She shifted the baby in her arms. The tiny thing let out a soft coo. Right, Natalie said, pulling out her phone. Let's see what lies I've been texting you about for months. She tapped her screen a few times, then turned it around. Message after message. Natalie, Daniel, you need to talk to me. Natalie, we need to set up child support before the court orders it. Natalie, she's sick, and I can't get a hold of you. You need to be a father. Natalie, I swear to God, if you don't at least tell your fiancé before she marries you, I will. My stomach turned. Sarah lunged at the phone, trying to knock it out of her hands. That doesn't prove anything, she snapped. Anyone can fake messages, are you serious right now? Natalie hissed, stepping back. You knew. That was when I noticed something. The way Sarah was standing, slightly in front of Daniel, body turned toward him. The way he wasn't protesting or arguing. A horrible thought crawled into my mind. How long have you known? I asked Sarah, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't answer. That told me everything. She had known the whole time. And not only had she kept it from me, she had encouraged him to hide it. My own fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry. The man who let his sister try on my dress like she was the bride. The rage that bubbled up inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. But before I could speak, Natalie's voice cut through the tension again. You really think I came here just to warn her? She asked, tilting her head. Her lips curled into a smile. I came here to make sure she saw this. She pulled out another piece of paper. And this one was from the court. I barely had time to process what was happening before Natalie tossed the paper onto a nearby table. I stepped forward, hands shaking as I picked it up. It was a paternity order. A legal document stating that Daniel had already been proven to be the father of Natalie's baby. That he had been ordered to start paying child support. That if he refused, his wages would be garnished and his assets could be seized. I looked up at him, feeling like I was staring at a stranger. You knew, I whispered. You knew, and you let me plan a wedding with you anyway. Daniel finally spoke. I was going to tell you, when? I snapped. Before or after we walked down the aisle? Sarah, who still hadn't taken off my dress, crossed her arms. Oh, stop being dramatic, she scoffed. People make mistakes. I stared at her in disbelief. She sounded angry. Not at Daniel. Not at the fact that he had cheated and had a child with another woman. She was angry at me. Like I was the problem. Natalie let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. You know what? I don't even care about your wedding drama. She turned back to Daniel, her expression ice cold. I came here for one reason. To let you know that since you ignored the first order, she leaned in. The court just approved my request for full custody. Daniel flinched. Sarah gasped. And suddenly, she lost it. What the? She shrieked, stepping toward Natalie. You can't do that. He has rights. You're not taking his child away from him. Natalie raised an eyebrow. Oh, now you care? Sarah's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. I watched as something cracked in her expression. She turned to Daniel, eyes wide and desperate. You're not going to let her take your baby, right? She whispered. And that was when it all clicked. Sarah wasn't just being competitive. She wasn't just trying to steal attention. She wasn't just some overbearing sister with a weird obsession. She was in love with her own brother. Daniel didn't answer her right away. His face was unreadable, like he was realizing something for the first time. But Sarah? Sarah snapped. She turned back to me, her expression twisted with anger. This is all your fault, she spat. If you weren't here, none of this would be happening. I almost laughed. You're blaming me for your brother's cheating? She didn't hear me. She was spiraling. You ruined everything. You came into our family, and suddenly he stopped caring about what really mattered. You took him away from me. The boutique was dead silent. My mother was frozen. My friends looked like they were watching a horror movie in real life. And Daniel? Daniel took a slow step away from Sarah. Finally, something seemed to register. I looked between the two of them, my stomach churning. I never took him from you, I said slowly. He's not yours to take. Sarah's breath hitched. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Then, in a voice so full of venom it could kill, she whispered, he should have been. I stared at her. Daniel stared at her. Even Natalie stared at her. And then, before anyone could react, Sarah grabbed the front of the wedding dress and ripped it straight down the middle. The sound of tearing fabric was louder than it should have been. My dress, was ripped straight down the middle, delicately splitting like it had never meant anything. Sarah stood there, chest rising and falling, hands still clenched around the shredded fabric. Her expression was wild. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, all at once, are you insane? My mom shouted, her voice shaking with rage. My maid of honor gasped. My friends whispered frantically. The boutique assistant looked like she might faint. But I barely heard them, because all I could focus on was Sarah. Her hands trembled against the ruined dress. Her face was twisted, not just in anger, but in something deeper, something broken. Daniel was pale. He took another slow step away from her, his eyes locked on the shredded fabric like it had finally hit him just how far this had gone. And then, Sarah turned to me. "This was supposed to be mine," she whispered. Something in her voice made the hairs on my arms rise. "Not just the dress," she went on. "Not just the wedding. Everything." I stared. "What are you talking about?" Her lips trembled. Her face twisted. Then, like something inside her snapped, she whirled on Daniel. "You loved me first." My stomach dropped. The entire room went dead silent. Sarah's breathing was ragged, her eyes flickering between me and Daniel. "I was always there," she continued, voice unsteady. "I was the one who understood you. I was the one who supported you, stood by you. Knew everything about you. And then she showed up, and suddenly, I didn't matter anymore." Daniel's face was completely blank. Then, very, very quietly, "Sarah." She flinched. "I'm your brother." A sharp inhale. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but she shook her head violently, like she could erase the truth. "It doesn't have to be like that," she whispered. It wasn't always like that. We were so close before she ruined everything." She turned to me again, eyes filled with pure, burning hatred. "I hate you," she spat. "I should have felt afraid. I should have been angry. But all I felt was pity. Because this wasn't just jealousy. This wasn't just competition." Sarah had genuinely convinced herself that her own brother was supposed to love her the way a husband loves a wife. She was delusional. And Daniel, who had ignored, encouraged, or excused her behavior for years, was just now realizing what that meant. Natalie's voice broke the silence. "I knew something was weird about you," she muttered, shaking her head at Sarah. "But damn." Sarah turned on her so fast I thought she might hit her. "You," she spat. "You're the reason everything is ruined. You and your bastard child." She never got to finish. Because in a move that I will cherish forever, Natalie, one-handed, mind you, since she was still holding her baby, grabbed the full glass of champagne from the boutique's refreshment table and threw it straight into Sarah's face. Sarah let out a shrieking gasp as the liquid drenched her, makeup smearing, hair sticking to her face. She staggered back, hands flailing. Natalie smirked. "Oops." Sarah screamed. A full-on tantrum scream. And that was when Daniel finally snapped. "Enough." Sarah froze. His voice was louder than I had ever heard it. But more than that, it sounded disgusted. Not at me. Not at Natalie. At her. "Do you even hear yourself?" he demanded, stepping closer to Sarah. "You ruined her dress. You're insulting a baby. You're acting like some obsessed." He stopped himself. Ran a hand through his hair. "Jesus, Sarah. You need help." Sarah recoiled. "No," she whispered, eyes darting back and forth. "No, you don't mean that." Daniel didn't say anything. And that silence? That was the final crack. Sarah's hands fisted at her sides. She let out a choked sob, then shoved past everyone and ran out of the boutique. I never saw her again. Once Sarah was gone.